Cleo Abrams is an Emmy-nominated former Vox host who now brings that same rigorous journalistic spirit to optimistic tech coverage. So whether it's the latest about satellite internet or quantum computing or F1 racing, she'll tell us why it matters not only to us, but to the world and to our future. Amjad Hanif is Vice President of Creator Product at YouTube. If you've ever used YouTube Studio or YouTube Analytics, if you've uploaded a video, run a thumbnail A/B test, or looked at a retention graph, that's his team. And I'm Renee, your Creator Liaison. I bring YouTube and creators together for discussions exactly like this on the Creator Insider podcast. So when we started talking a while ago, I had just left my media job to start a YouTube channel, and you were leaving your media job to start a YouTube channel. What is it like going from a business to creating your own business on YouTube?
It's all of the adjectives. I mean, I could say it's hard and it's also incredible and it's also challenging in all of the best ways. Like, a lot of the things that I thought were going to be easy were actually very difficult, and a lot of the things that I thought were going to be difficult were actually easier than I thought. So for example, in the easier than I thought category, having your own ability to have creative control, I think is a massive deal. And that felt magical and that felt so exciting. I was sort of constantly experimenting with new formats and new elements of the show that I felt maybe could have been possible at a media company, but were even more possible because I was able to experiment so quickly myself. Also, I would say to some extent, building a business around that felt easier than I thought it was going to be. We can come back to that one, but definitely some challenges, but also I felt confident that once there was an audience for the show, there was also a business for the show. Yeah. In the category of harder than I thought, I mean, there were so many things about working in a media company that I took for granted until I left. So for example, I had the great privilege when I was working at Vox of always doing an episode that I had pitched. So all of the ideas were my passion projects, and then I got to research them and make the video and all those things. And so I thought when I went independent, I would have this incredible wealth of ideas because they had all come from me before, and I'm just going to go make all of them. But I hadn't realized that every idea that I had pitched had been one of 5, and someone had been helping me figure out which were the good ones. And so in the first year that I launched Huge, I was spinning my wheels on lots and lots and lots of ideas that didn't end up becoming videos, and sort of not wasting time, but like going through cycles on those projects that someone had been helping me avoid before. It's like a good story editor and sort of a team around you that helps you make decisions is a really big deal, and that took a lot of time to build.
Yeah, I had a slightly different experience because I was doing tech media. And so when I started my own channel, I just kept doing almost exactly the same content, and it was dictated by the news cycle. So I didn't have to worry about the ideas, but I was terrified of having to like monetize that channel because I went from having a salary to having nothing. And I had a little bit of a runway, but in the first year, I made as much money as I made as my best year as editorial director for a tech network. Amazing. I made more money the next year, and I think I would have made double this year if I hadn't come to YouTube. And a lot of that was I got monetized. I got into YouTube Partner Program. I started getting AdSense, and then I started doing brand deals. And that, to me, is like the ability to build a business on YouTube.
If you could go back, Renee, like 2 years when you were making that transition, is there any advice you wish you would have gotten sooner?
I think the anxiety was the hard part for me. And I think if I had any advice, it would be like to have a plan, because I didn't think about doing like affiliate first. I didn't think about doing shopping right away. I was like dead set on AdSense. I didn't think about doing memberships either. And there's so many different monetization forms. I didn't have a strategy. I just started off with what was there.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. It's one of the things that's changed a lot in the creator economy is that there are so many ways to earn now. If you had started 10 years ago, it was all about AdSense and maybe a little bit of brand deals. But now folks are earning from memberships, fan funding through digital goods, still have lots of brand deals as well as ads. And so you can actually make a well-rounded business in a way that you couldn't do maybe 10 years ago.
How do you think about that? Like, just like, because at the end of the day, business is still like income in, income out. Mm-hmm. How do you think about that, like with YouTube being the source of your income?
Well, I think it's about that matching process of, does the idea for the creative that I have go with this business model or that business model or that business model? And because there are so many options on YouTube, the matching of the idea with the business model is, I think, the most crucial bit, because you can have an incredible business that is primarily based around AdSense and product sales. Or in my case, I have a business based around entirely AdSense combined with brand deals. And so for me, the reason why that felt like the best model was I'm doing a wide appeal show about technology. But the thing that I do that is a little bit different for advertisers that I felt really confident in is instead of going through the process of saying like, oh, you're sort of an influencer with a certain taste that we're going to borrow. Like, hey, I'm, trying this product and here's what I think about it in a sponsored way. It's more that advertisers come to me when they say, hey, we have a really complicated technical product, or we have a sort of new innovative part of our company that we need help explaining. And so our team functions as, instead of a project manager and animator and producer and all of the things that you might need to hire in-house or go to a creative agency, we kind of are that as well as the distribution element. And so that means we get to work with partners that are really exciting to us as well. I mean, explaining IBM's new partnership with NASA is a really interesting it's a sponsored placement. It's clearly marked as an ad, but when we craft that, it's very much in the style, the explainer style. And that fits in really well with both naturally what the audience would want to see if they're going to be seeing advertising, and also what works well as a business.
I love that. And I've heard anecdotally from creators, if you are making a lot of evergreen content and you're publishing regularly and you get a large amount of views, AdSense can really be your primary form of income, even more than brand deals. But if you're publishing less regularly, if you're more newsy content, if you don't have that back catalog, brand deals can really be the prime source of income. And then thirdly, if you are not making material that's, family-friendly, brand safe, then memberships and fan funding, and you have all these different ways to sort of fit a strategy to your content.
Yeah, we've seen that strategy work well for a lot of creators. And probably the one thing that's changed pretty significantly in the last couple of years is memberships has become a tool that a lot of creators take advantage of. We now make it easy for a creator to publish a video to their members only for a period of a few days or a few weeks to give their super fans a chance to see the content before everyone else. And that applies to almost every vertical. And folks that are taking advantage of that have seen some pretty good growth and a recurring revenue stream in addition to the AdSense that they would always earn from it.
Your team also works on multi-format, on making creators, everything available for creators. And you really, you had the Vox background, the long form background, but then you really blew up on short form. And you sort of have this best of both worlds approach. Doesn't it feel like either is subservient to the other?
I really think about explaining a general topic as a cluster of content as opposed to a specific episode drop. I mean, we have a flagship show. That show is generally runtime anywhere from 12 to 30 minutes. And those feel very much that's the same runtime that 20 to 30 minutes is what I was doing for Explained on Netflix. So these are highly produced television quality episodes of our central show. But then 99% of the work of doing good video journalism is in the collection of facts and the collection of visuals and the ordering of those visuals and the sort of analogy that helps you really get at a specific idea. And all of that work is done before you write a sort of set script for a 20-minute episode. Short form for us is combining those pieces, or maybe this piece over here didn't make it into the long form video and now it's becoming its own short, or even, hey, this might be a good idea for a long form video eventually, but let's try and explain it in 60 seconds and see how the audience responds, and then maybe we'll make something later based on how they feel about it. And so it's a journalistic tool in that way. It's sort of gauging response from the audience, it's getting their feedback, it's getting their ideas, and then it's also an opportunity to create a sort of educational cluster around something that is more than just what fits into a structured story for 20 to 30 minutes. That's why I love having both. It's much more about what is the best way to get this concept across to someone in the way that they want to enjoy it, whether that's 30 minutes on a TV or 45 seconds when you're scrolling.
Have you learned differences between the audiences that are watching all your shorts versus long or versus a mix of those?
What's interesting? I think the reason why the show works on both is that there are a couple core principles that are not only our priorities, but are what seem to work best with the audience that we've developed and are continuing to grow. So those things, in fact, I wrote a spreadsheet of all of the shorts that we've published, and then their performance, trying to control for how large the channel was when we posted it.
Okay.
So a sort of ratio to gauge how well they really did, how good the short was. And what I saw was in the top roughly 50, they all had 3 things. And the bottom 10 to 20 were like the experiments that did not have these things. The first was that they are genuinely good explanations of something, like how something works or why it's important in a way that is actually information. Like, this thing happened is much less good than this thing happened and here's why that matters, or this thing happened and here's how the technology works, something like that. So genuinely good explanation. Inherently visual, so you have to see it in order to understand it. All of our lowest performing shorts were things that honestly could have been like a tweet thread, and watching a video needs to be you need to deserve the video time that you're expecting, the eyes as well as the ears. So is genuinely visual. And then third is genuinely optimistic. Our show is all about optimism about the future, using technology to build potentially better futures, how the sort of difficult, meaty, wonderful process of doing that. And so all of the shorts that were genuinely optimistic and sort of pointed to, here's a group that's working on a really interesting problem and succeeding, or here's an idea that we hadn't considered and now might be possible, or here's a big development or innovation. All of those things were really like outstanding hits, as opposed to the ones that were sort of like trying to be more newsy and were not genuinely optimistic. And all of that in shorts is exactly the same in long form. So
it's really interesting.
It's nice it's really gratifying to see that. And the format is different, but the brand of the show remains the same.
Right.
The feeling that you get is the same. So I think for that reason, people who watch our shorts like our long video, and people who watch our long video like our shorts.
People may not remember the video, but they know how you made them feel. And if you want to get them to move from short to long form, they're happy in shorts. You have to get them to want to make that move. And I think you do that by promising more of that feeling. And then your team builds like the engine behind.
We do. So for creators, YouTube Studio is the app that they use almost as much as YouTube itself. And we try to give them the insights to understand what their audience is watching, who's watching it, how long they're watching it for, to help you just understand them even better, so you can tailor your content as your audience changes over the years.
And you're also pivotal in announcing the Shorts rev share last year. How have you seen that market sort of grow?
That's been really exciting to watch. A couple years back, Shorts were an exciting phenomenon on the viewer side, but we all asked ourselves, like, how will creators earn from it? Creators are now actually earning quite a bit from that relative to what they were a year ago. I can see advertisers leaning more into that as well. And so I think it's a great opportunity as a part of your overall strategy, as a part of long form and fan funding. You don't want to build a business, like you talk a lot about building a business, like you don't want to build a business just on one format, on one method of monetization. And that's, I think, the beauty of YouTube is you can earn from all these sources.
I think there's a little bit of apples and oranges sometimes, because creators will look at it and say, like, I got a shorts view and I got a long form view, but the long form view made this much. But the long form view might have had mid-rolls and pre-roll. This feels more like we're getting closer to like revenue per hour, if that's a thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And especially when shorts was new, folks are trying to compare the two, and they really are different. A lot of long form videos are now consumed on a TV in what we call living room. And that's a really different experience than watching 10 shorts on your mobile. And ad rates and ad experiences will differ between those. And so it's hard to compare them equally. You also may have different audiences that are watching those different content.
And a different time commitment for us to make the short versus making like the 30 minute.
Totally. Yeah. That's a big part of it. I'm able to cover more things, more news that feels like a sort of science hit that people might want to see. It opens up a lot of creative options.
So while I have you both here, I want to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about AI, because you cover it extensively and you're building AI tools for creators. What sort of excites you when you think about AI as part of your process?
Well, for me, I think the healthy tension with any new technology is between ease and control. So I'm a person who was nights and weekends learning how to use Adobe After Effects.
Yes.
I am still not as good an animator as the animator that I now work with. But those are very, very highly controllable tools. To someone who has spent the time to learn how to use them, you can really specifically make a individual vision that you have. On the AI tool side, you can make things so much faster and more easily. They're really pretty hard to control if you have a very high specificity of what you want still. That's getting much better. But inherently in the user experience, I mean, I'd love your thoughts on this, but if I were to try to tell you what I want you to draw in words, as opposed to draw you a picture and say, could you improve this or something, the user interface of traditional Gen AI tools, at least so far, of
it's
text.
Zork. It's like 1970s Zork.
Is hard. That's hard to control. So there
You
is
got to
that
learn a
tension.
new language almost to control that. At
And
this point.
sometimes it's like it's not the best. Like I'm very excited about AI tools that are incorporating, more drawing, more like controls of telling what color specifically of that whatever that mix is between like AI and the tools that I'm used to as an animator. And I think that is the reason why I mentioned that tension is that it's always going to be there. There's always going to be what is the fastest way to do something, and then what if you have a specific vision, how do you get there? And I'm really excited about a version of our creativity that includes both. When you need a background that scrolls through infinity that you're going to blur past with a supersonic plane animation, well, you can generate that background in Midjourney, and it doesn't matter exactly what the details are. And we would have previously been, making it
a matte painting
versus a highly technical animation that needs to get every little wire correct. Okay, we're going to do that in a more
for a NASA suit.
For a NASA suit, exactly.
You were at Made-On when Amjad's team was talking about the Insights tab and allowed AI dubbing. Is that the sort of thing that we're going to see first?
Like, in addition to all the stuff making it easier to create, the other thing that we're working hard on is stuff you mentioned a little while ago is about coming up with ideas. There's so much time spent on understanding what viewers want, what's interesting, what you've done before, what's trending, and we want to make that whole ideation process much more efficient for creators. And nobody can do that the way we can because we have all of that viewer data. We know who your audience is, and so we can help you figure out, like this month, what are the topics that your audience is interested in that you haven't covered yet, but are trending really well, and help you get that creative process going so that you're not spending weeks with 7 or 8 ideas. You can actually start very quickly, and then you can storyboard it, you can outline it, and then actually get into the creation process, which...
And no tyranny of the blank page.
Yes.
Yes.
Get out of that blank page as soon as possible. And so that's actually one of the most exciting parts of what we're working on.
And then increasing the reach with all the multi-language.
We talked a little bit at Made on YouTube about Aloud, which allows seamless translations. I'm excited about that as well.
It's going to go right into Studio?
It's going to go right into Studio. You'll be able to slide a button and say, like, I'd love this translated in 2, 3, 4, 5 languages. Audiences in all these markets will get to see your content. And I think it'll expand your reach as a creator, but what I'm really excited about is for viewers who have been consuming it in subtitles and allow them to actually have audio that they can understand in a much different way.
I love it. If you could give any advice to a new creator starting a channel, starting a business, what would it be?
The thing that has been incredibly gratifying so far that I would want myself to know, so I hesitate to put myself in the shoes of any kind of creator, but for me, I wish someone had told me that if you really love it, there might be other people like you. And I think that is often a good way of finding genuine white space creatively and for businesses. If you think about it like starting a creative startup, if you feel like something is missing for you. So I felt like in my media diet, there wasn't this kind of sort of Star Trek of tech journalism, and I was like, I miss that feeling. I want to have that when I watch. I love all of the other things that I'm watching, but that feels missing to me. If you have that feeling about something, whether it's cooking content or linguistics, or and there's an infinite number of things, that's a good sign. And I ended up trusting it enough to start a show, but I wish that someone had told me, like, that's the feeling to follow, like that feeling of wanting something that's not there for you, build it for yourself, and other people might be like you.
I love that.
I love that too, because that really exemplifies the amazing power of YouTube, is that content that never would have gotten produced 20 years ago now gets produced, and you find an audience, a global audience. The thing that I would share as well that builds on that is that once you've found that audience, pay attention to the analytics. Make sure you understand who those folks are, what keeps them coming back, because that's, your content is your amazing creation, but you've got to keep that connection to your audience and understand what they're looking for, because ultimately you're serving that new audience that you found.
The audience tab. Huge recommendation for the
There you
audience
go.
tab. Thank you both so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.